call it the Eternal City, and they're right. Everywhere you turn, there's a fountain, a church, or a square to gaze upon. It is indeed as beautiful as you imagine it, and more.
When you think about Rome, you instantly think of the Colosseum. It's the biggest and most picturesque image of Rome, and think about the fact that it was built almost 2,000 years ago.
The fighting day would begin around noon with women fighting midgets, and then as the prime time event would be the gladiators fight, and the emperor would watch from over there. This is Fontana di Trevi, probably the most iconic place in Rome, and it took about 30 years to complete. Every person who comes here drops a coin. It's about 80,000 euros in coin every month. The big winner, the Red Cross. One cannot come to Rome and miss ground zero of Catholicism, Vatican City. With 6 million visitors a year, this is the 6th most visited museum in the world. The Vatican museums are filled with artwork from all the ages of humankind, from ancient Greek statues to contemporary art, with the Sistine Chapel being the superstar of the museum. Catholic tradition says that St. Peter's Basilica is the burial site of St. Peter, one of the Christ disciples and the first pope. St. Peter's tomb is supposed to be right under the altar. One of the most beautiful Renaissance sculptures, Michelangelo's Pietà, is housed here. Michelangelo carved it when he was only 23 years old. It is the only sculpture Michelangelo ever signed, carving his name on Mary's sash.
We are on top of St. Peter's Church in Vatican, and we're about to go on top of the dome.
Even though the panoramic view will be worth the 320 steps climb, think twice before you start, as the spiral staircase gets progressively narrow and you can't turn back, as it's a one-way climb. After you visited St. Peter's Square, you shouldn't miss Castel Sant'angelo, which is within walking distance. This is Piazza di Spagna. We're right at the steps of the Fontana de la Barcacha. There is the Spanish embassy that gives the name to this place, the Spanish Square. A few tourists notice that John Keats' memorial house is on the right of the Spanish Steps. The famous English poet arrived here hoping that the seaside air will cure his illness, but only lived here for the last months of his life.
This is Cafe Greco, just down the street from the Spanish Stairs, and it's 250 years old, and famous people like Ernest Hemingway just drink their coffee every day here. Is one of the best preserved buildings from ancient Rome. It is so well preserved because since the 7th century AD it is also used as a church, St. Mary of the Martyrs. Here inside the Pantheon is buried Vittorio Emanuele II, the first king of United Italy, and over that part is buried Raphael Sanzio, the great Renaissance painter. Is one of the most beautiful places in Rome, and it's an iconic image of the city. It features 3 fountains, 4 palazzos and 2 churches.
Imagine that 2000 years ago, here was a huge racing track for chariots. Now it is a charming square and the perfect place for you to experience the Italians' favorite activity, the dolce far niente. The Fountain of the Four Rivers represents the 4 major rivers of the 4 continents known at the time. The Ganges for Asia, the Nile for Africa, Rio de la Plata representing America, and the Danube for Europe.
Ponte Fabricio right here is the oldest bridge in Rome. It was built in 62 before Christ and it's over 2000 years old. It connects the eastern bank of the Tiber River with the Isola Tiberina.
As you cross the bridge, you stumble upon the charming neighborhood of Trastevere. It comes to life in the evening as tourists and locals alike fill the narrow streets in search of the perfect dinner or perhaps just taking a passeggiata. Here used to be a pool about 2000 years ago, and imagine that a few emperors swam over here, and they had also a library and they had entertainers. It was a country club of the Roman age. Near the baths of Diocletian, facing Piazza della Repubblica, is Basilica Santa Maria degli Angeli e dei Martiri. The church was built in the 16th century when Michelangelo Buonarroti transformed part of the ruins of the baths in a church. After antiquity and then the Renaissance and Baroque, the third glorious period of the Italian people was the end of the 19th century. They were reunited under King Vittorio Emanuele II. His monument is here, and there's also the monument of the unknown soldier. The Italians are not quite fond of the altar of the fatherland, calling the building the typewriter or the wedding cake. Right next to Venice Square, there's Emperor Trajan's Forum, with a majestic 38 meters high Trajan's Column.